Hey, we're Shadows of Sanity Studios, and we are presenting the Post-Mortem, the Roundtable Live Post-Mortem of our game, Horror Beneath the Sands. Pretty cool little platformer we developed at Full Sail University's final project over 4 months. I'm Andrew Mead.
Andrew Gobbets.
James Ashmore.
And Dustin Thorne.
So we have a slide, we have some documentation here. This is actually our original GDD. And that was actually, James was the person who came up with the original concept, which is nothing like now. What was the original game supposed to be like, James?
So the basic game was going to be, especially in this current GDD, was going to be four basic abilities that you could swap in and out, and you would earn through different challenges that you would play through in the game, and then you would use those abilities in this open world where you'd collect different collectibles and then earn achievements in varying different degrees of how many collectibles you've earned. And then different challenges, obviously. And I mean, it changed a lot from that to what's now a two-ability game.
Right. The interesting thing is that the mechanic that made we called it capsule platformers back when we first started. But the mechanic that made capsule platformers what it was the fact that you had to store platforming abilities for later, like saving for a rainy day or whatever. But we got our cool, neat, nifty mechanic actually from one of Andrew Gobbets' pitches. And Andrew, what was the mechanic?
Well, in one of the pitches that we had presented, the game revolved around there being two states, light and dark, and you had to swap between the two to effectively traverse through puzzles by, shining light on a closed door that had the light symbol on it, things like that. Well, it evolved as we started working toward capsule platformer. That idea evolved into phasing, which was designed to let the world change as the player progressed through it.
All right, so we're going to jump into some live gameplay real quick. This is our week 3 executable of Horror Beneath the Sands. So we still have some placeholder art, like we have our Iron Guard there instead of Professor Ward. So there are going to be some bugs and some different things that aren't quite ready, but we got to show it to you now. So Dustin's actually going to walk us through the basic gameplay of what we have now.
So what we got going on right now is James is running through our tutorial level, so just a brief idea of what's to come ahead for the different levels. We have breakable walls that he just burst through that you have to use a super speed or to get through. We also have some pickups, little general pages. They kind of hidden or in different areas throughout the level. Each of them have about 5 of them, and it's just at the end of the game you can see how many pages you have picked up, kind of like an achievement thing. He's also using the super speed to cross large distant paths along with spikes, and right now he's going across some metal boots, which is the one thing that has stuck with our entire game the entire time. It allows you to climb walls, go upside down, get around areas, different parts. And we also have, this is where the phasing part comes in. It's kind of little checkpoints. What Andrew was talking about, we have to hit these at a certain time. Otherwise, the level changes into more drastic measures.
I'd like to talk about what went wrong, and in my opinion, what went wrong, and the biggest #1 thing is bugs, man. We had the worst time with bugs. We would turn in something, and teachers would be like, what you're doing is awesome, we think it's really fun, we see where you're going with it, but we got to dock you a bunch of points because there are swaths of the game that were just unplayable due to bugs. Right now, the current bug is if you die in a kill volume, you respawn, you keep dying over and over again. And I wrote some code for that. I did some stuff. It's not going to be a problem anymore. But it was like every week there was a different bug that would emerge out of nowhere, seemingly. And it was really, really frustrating. So what went wrong is definitely bugs. Definitely bugs. We actually started out as a 5-man team. One guy was really techie, and he was going to do all the scripting, and he ended up having to take a LOA at the end of research and marketing. So all this stuff that we put together with the thoughts that we would have somebody to do all this difficult tech stuff wasn't there anymore. So it kind of fell on Andrew G and I to do a lot of the technical side, and Dustin and James ended up doing a lot of level design. I know it's hard while you're playing, but James, do you want to kind of talk about our level design theory, if it were your process?
Yeah, a lot of this, level design is a lot about making sure that each ability is pretty much highlighted, and sure, I mean you're gonna have your basic jumps and pitfalls. You're gonna have to use just your basic jump to play and get past a certain stage. But you're going to also have different abilities that you're going to have, like your metal boots and your super speed to get past different problems as well. And we have the phasing to mix things up as we go as well, so that the player isn't so sure of themselves, as they go along. But that has to do with that, and then also trying to mix in with some of the visuals that we have as well, that we could mix the different assets that we've gotten in over the past months, and then make them even prettier than they were before.
It's kind of, and that's also kind of one of the challenging things about UDK. If we were going to do like a 2D platformer, like an XNA, like we could just bitmap it in Photoshop, and then the programmer could come through and you could put placeholder art there. And then when we got a real 2D art, we just put it in there, boom, and it would adhere to the bitmap. And that was it, like asset day. Woo, look at that! Immediately, everything's different. In our case, we had to use tons and tons and tons of UDK placeholder assets, and then replace each and every one of them manually, which took probably about 2 weeks out of our entire development time. And we're still slowly it'll be running along, and we'll be like, oh, how did we forget that little thing or whatever.
Well, I think that steps into something that falls into the category of something that went right and went wrong. And one of the processes that we had and things of that nature is when we first started out, like Andrew said, we had the 5-man team, and we had a member that was very technically inclined, was very familiar with the scripting side of things and whatnot. And so we set the initial scope of our game to a level that at the time we felt was appropriate. It was ambitious, but it wasn't out of line. And once we lost some of that technical proficiency, I think that's one thing that went wrong for a little while was our scope. It took us a while to realize that we were no longer working from a viable scope of what we were going to be able to accomplish. Then at the same time, it's something that went right, because once we realized, okay, we need to start paring back, we still had, as a team, a unified vision of what we were working toward, and so we were able to start paring back and readjusting that scope as necessary. But it did still leave us in some areas coming back later to realize that when we readjusted the scope, there were some things we hadn't readjusted, like how many assets we were needing or using and whatnot. And so that was the biggest lesson learned, I think, across the board was just our general overarching management of everything, understanding and being able to recognize early that when we make changes, we really need to look at the full scope of those changes. How is this going to affect our assets and everything, rather than what we were doing at the time is saying, okay, well, for this week, we're changing our scope, so that means we're not dealing with this mechanic anymore or something like that. And so we got too focused on one specific area and not enough on the overarching scope. But once we did start figuring that out, things started working more smoothly, except for the bugs.
James, you want to fire up level 3 real quick?
Sure.
I don't know, Dustin. We're kind of talking about what went right. I did a little bit of talking already, so I'll throw the ball to you. What do you think is another thing that kind of went right throughout development? Did we lose Dustin?
Nope.
Okay. Oh,
Mute.
there we go. Oh, you muted yourself.
Jesus. What went right? I think what's funny is to look back on what our original scope is a decent word to use in our original plan, and looking at what we had to cut. Like we originally had, what 4 or 5 mechanics. Only ended up with 2. We had originally had like a
15
dozen levels
Yeah.
that we wanted to use, and we're stuck with like 4 in a tutorial. I mean, it's just crazy how much of a scope we imagined we should have had or we could have had, and what we actually boiled it down to.
James, you want to kind of talk to us about teleport and why we loved it and why it got cut?
Teleport had a lot of different, variations of it. First, it would just go up and down, and then it turned to, go side to side, and then we needed it to actually, be able to throw your trajectory at you, and then that was the one breaking point where it just didn't seem to work, and we had to, toss it and keep with our 2 main skills that definitely worked, and had everything around it pretty much built around that could have already be able to use pretty much the same, variations, which was the speed.
So before we leave, starting with AG, let's just share something, a little something we learned or whatever, and then we'll skedaddle.
Obviously, the major skill that I learned throughout the whole thing was just becoming much more proficient with Unreal Script and with Action Script, and learning some of the more high-level skills that go along with developing in UDK.
I'd have to say that my big thing was production, managing the asset pipelines, looking at it from a 10,000 foot view, and going, oh, this needs to happen, and this doesn't need to happen yet, and it's not really what I got into school for, but I'm glad that sorry, I have a chest cold. Wasn't necessarily what I got to school for, but I'm glad I got a chance to take a crack at it, and obviously got a lot better as a technical designer.
But learning-wise, I believe I'd have to go with probably working as a team. Thinking about how in depth each of us and how coherent we have to be as a team in order to succeed. Especially working across time zones, everyone's in different states across the country. So, we could have a 2-hour lapse between times, and we had our meetings at midnight, and so they lasted a long time. But working as a team, really, it's going to set us, give us a good experience for the future, because obviously everything is dealt with teams in the gaming industry, and so I really look forward to it.
I think game balance is a lot of things that I've learned. Just learning from the teachers and telling us what would a player have, and what they would need to be able to see, to be able to make certain jumps and be able to perform certain skills, and in order of that too, of how our levels need to advance to that point, to learn those skills to play those later levels that challenge the player.
Right on. Sounds good. Well, it looks like we're all done here. Thank you so much, guys, for being such a great team.
Thank you.
Well, and thank you to the staff, faculty, Full Sail, and thanks to our classmates that have been cool. And that's it. We'll either see you at graduation or we'll see you somewhere down the road. So, peace.
See you.
See ya.
Adios.